Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to the January 13th of 2021 meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Utah Transit Authority. We welcome you to a new year and certainly look forward to the possibilities that lay ahead. Our meeting is electronic, meaning there is no anchor location. And in order to do that, I'll ask Jenna Osler if she'll read a statement to that end.
Thank you, Chair. This is the electronic board meeting determination statement signed by the Chair of the Board. Consistent with provisions of the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act, Utah Code 52-4-207, subsection 4, as the Chair of the Board of Trustees of the Utah Transit Authority, I hereby make the following written determinations in support of my decision to hold electronic meetings of the UTA Board without a physical anchor location. Due to the ongoing threat of the COVID-19 pandemic and the persistence of community person-to-person virus transmission, conducting board and board committee meetings with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. Federal, state, and local health authorities have adopted guidelines which encourage institutions and individuals to limit in-person interactions and recommend increased virtual interactions. This written determination takes effect on December 16th, 2020, and is effective until midnight on January 15th, 2021, and may be reissued by future written determinations as deemed appropriate. Dated this 11th day of December, 2020, signed Carlton J. Christensen.
Thank you, Jenna. I would also note if there's public that would like to make comment, there is a route in which you can register through our WebEx portal, and we'll get to our public comment section in just a minute. I certainly also welcome my colleagues Beth Holbrook and Jeff Acerson, and delighted that we can be together. Let's get started with our Safety First Minute, and with that we'll welcome Sheldon Shaw. Good morning, Sheldon.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, trustees. Appreciate, as always, the opportunity to give a safety message. Today, I wanted to highlight a safety partner, and that safety partner is Utah Operation Lifesaver. We have volunteers across the state and many in our company who are out giving rail safety presentations in order to try to be proactive and prevent rail accidents from happening across our state. And so thanks to all those who volunteer and those who are out giving presentations trying to make us all safe. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Sheldon. That brings us to public comments, and do we have anybody from the public that would like to make a comment, Jenna?
Sorry, Chair. I do not see anyone who has indicated that they would like to make a comment. Okay.
Well, we certainly welcome any follow-up comment either through email or our website or by making a phone call to us, and certainly that will be made available to the board. With that, we'll move on to section 4, which is our consent agenda, and we have on there our approval of our minutes from December the 16th. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
My apologies, I had a technical difficulty, but I fixed it. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff. With all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Next up, we'll have our agency report, and we welcome our Executive Director, Carolyn Gannott. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning. Thank you. I just have a one item that two items I want to cover. One is the Ridership Report, which is listed on the agenda. The other is some good news regarding the Ogden-Weber State University Bus Rapid Transit Project. On December 15th, we submitted a letter for letter of no prejudice, they call it, so that allows us to do some early construction activities before we actually have the small starts grant agreement executed with the Federal Transit Administration. And they completed their review and let us know yesterday that they have approved that. in the amount of $23,746,385. So that allows us to begin those construction activities while we work on getting the grant executed, apply for it, do the final application for it, and move forward on the execution. But with this approval, we can incur the cost for the projects as described in what we had in that request. And it allows us to have pre-award authority as long as we continue to meet all federal requirements, and that allows us to get reimbursed by the Federal Transit Administration once the grant is signed. So this is a really good step for us. We're able to now be able to move forward on constructing the project. So and meet the construction seasons that we need to meet. So anyways, this is very good news for us. So I just wanted to let you know about that. The second item is the ridership report. And I'm going to have Eddie talk a little bit about that on the annual report. Unless, Beth, you have anything to say on the Ogden-Weber State.
Well, I'm just thrilled that we received approval for the LOMP. That just takes us to this next level. And I know that the city and Weber State and McKay Hospital and all the stakeholders are very excited to see this project move forward. So that is fantastic news. And thank you so much to staff who has worked so hard on this project. It's really exciting to see it to this phase. So thanks. And I think you meant 23 million, not 23,000.
Oh, I did say that. 23 million, $23,786,300.
Thanks for that clarification. I was wondering, what did that get us?
Actually, I'm getting better at saying, I'm sorry about that. Hey, so also, I really do want to thank FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. We put all of our information in. They worked over the holidays reviewing this and got it moved forward in pretty much record time. This actually for holiday review. So I really appreciate all their work and their effort in working with us. And our team did a great job in giving them all the information up front, so there weren't a lot of questions. So this is really key. So I'm really happy that the two agencies, us and FTA, were able to coordinate so well to be able to move forward on $23 million plus of construction work this year. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn this over to Eddie Cummins, Chief Operating Officer on the Ridership Report.
Good morning. Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, trustees. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is the 2020 Ridership Report. This is a slide that you have seen in the past. This just compares current ridership to our pre-COVID levels. As you can see, we have seen a slight bump in the last few days of the year of 2020. Currently, fixed route bus is down 44%, UBX is down 47%, light rail is down 61%. Paratransit's down 66%, and Frontrunner is currently down 73%. Next slide, please. So this chart compares 2018, 2019, and 2020. As you can see, we had a slight increase in 2019 over 2018, but ridership fell sharply in 2020 due to the pandemic. Overall, if you're doing the math there, ridership is down 47%. In 2020 versus 2019. Next slide, please. This chart compares year-to-date ridership against the previous year. January's on the far left and December's on the far right. The pink bar is 2019 and the red bar is 2020. As you can see, ridership was higher in January and February, but began falling in March. And as we all know, that date was right around March 11th. Whenever, kind of things went crazy with the COVID-19 pandemic. So by the end of the year, you can see we started to fall significantly over what previous year ridership was. Next slide, please. This chart to me is really telling. This chart shows historical averages of weekday ridership. Obviously, weekday ridership is the largest portion of our ridership. This chart goes from January 2008 through December 2020. The blue line is the average weekday ridership. The green line is the 12-month moving average. And the red line is the 60-month moving average. As you can see, the current ridership is well below the historical norm, and we've even seen a significant impact on the 60-month moving average. And so this, like I said, this slide is really telling. Just a significant drop. If you look at the red line with the 60-month moving average, you can see we were kind of ticking up, kind of went flat, and then just fell off there towards the end in 2020. Next slide, please. So this is the final chart and compares 2020 to 2019 ridership by mode. Overall, bus system was down 40%, paratransit was down 52%, route deviation was down 46%, mobility management was down 43%, light rail was down 52%, S-line performed the best at down 36%, commuter rail overall was down 66%, vanpool was down 34%. And again, overall ridership 2020 versus 2019, overall system-wide ridership was down 47%. Next slide, please. Are there any questions about the 2020 ridership?
Maybe, Eddie, not so much as a question, but a comment. It's actually, I mean, not that being down 47% is great, but when you think about only losing half of our ridership with all the major institutions that are fundamentally doing stuff online and office space, it's 75% vacant right now. That's actually pretty amazing that we've held that ratio as well as we have. Obviously it's a big gap to close back up, but I was encouraged to see that just at least inching back up in a positive direction through the course of the year for the most part, if I'm following that correctly.
Yeah, I think so, Chair. If you think about it, you're correct. A lot of our commuters, our office employees, things like that has dropped significantly. But the one thing that has stayed constant are the essential workers. And I think that's important to note that the people who need our system every day are still out there, still riding, still making their trips every morning. And like I said, so our essential workforce is still there.
Any questions for Eddie from the board?
No question. Again, just maybe a comment. I just thank you for your report, Eddie, and thank you, Carolyn. Again, I think one of the things that it does definitely help us to take a look at is that there is this core capacity or core need, and that this is going to be something that we can continue to look at when we look at our system as a whole moving forward. So I agree. I think that when you take into consideration the amount of decline nationwide, this is actually really pretty good, solid news. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Eddie? Okay. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you.
Carolyn, anything else?
Just one last item is that with the passage of the coronavirus, I guess, COVID-19 relief package, the second package that for transit that included transit, we are planning on receiving $33.5 million roughly in an allocation for our area. So that would be additional to the $187 million that we received in the first in the CARES Act program. So we will continue to look at that in our budget and how that goes forward. And actually that will help sustain us through the next few years as well. And as we deal with the unknown still on how we will recover from the pandemic, and also how our ridership recovers as well. So I just wanted to let you know that and really thank our Congress for passing that. That was very important to us as well. And the allocation did come out this week as well from the Federal Transit Administration.
Well, that is great news, and certainly we are thankful to the federal delegation for their action on that, and great news again on the Ogden notification. So thank you very much, Carolyn. Appreciate your report.
Thank you.
That takes us to item number 6 on our agenda, which is the financial report for November of 2020. And with that, we welcome Brad Armstrong. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Chair and members of the trustees and others. Wanted to cover the financial report for November of 2020, covering key metrics for the organization, and going into a little bit of detail with regard to some of those key metrics. Next slide, please. We have here the UTA Board dashboard, and I draw your attention to the bottom graph, which shows UTA sales tax growth over time. The red line is the 6-month moving average, and the blue line is the 12-month moving average. And if you look to the far right, you can see that we've had sharp increases in both the 6-month and 12-month growth rate for sales tax. In fact, it's over 8%, where our long-term growth rate in sales tax has been about 5%. And this is in the face of this recession that we've been facing. And it's important because about 2/3 of our funding for UTA comes from local sales taxes. And sales taxes are driven by economic conditions here in the state of Utah. We had the opportunity to attend the Utah Economic Outlook and Public Policy Summit yesterday, and heard leading economists, both nationally and locally, talk about economic conditions. And the conditions are surprisingly good for the situation we're in with the pandemic. In fact, it's a little surprising because we hear about people being unemployed, and yet we see our sales tax revenues going up. And I thought an interesting little factoid economic nugget that came out of it was they're calling this a K-shaped recession. We have some elements that are going up in our economy locally. For instance, our construction employment is up 19,000 people over the same time last year. Well, at the same time, as we're well aware, we have people in the leisure and hospitality business who are down about the same amount. And so the people in restaurants and the recreational areas are working less, but the construction area is working more. And because of that, construction generates a lot of sales tax revenues. It sort of explains what's happening with our sales tax revenues. So if we go to the top line of this report, we can see that through the year on the right side, we're up about 2.5% higher in terms of sales tax revenue for 2020 through October, because there's a little bit of a lag versus where we thought we would be in an economy that wasn't impacted by coronavirus. Moving on down, as we heard from Eddie Cummins, we heard that our ridership is down. And so we see that fare revenues are down about 39%. And we also, as a result of this, we've adjusted our efforts and reduced our operating expenses to try to adjust for these changes. And it's our operating expenses were about 10% below budget for the year. An interesting thing is our diesel price. We've talked about this before. Our diesel prices, which are used to drive our vehicles, have been much lower than our budget for the year. But they have started to go up. If we look on the 5th row down, we can see UTA diesel price is $1.85, which is significantly higher than it was in the last few months. If we look at the national and international markets, we see that crude oil prices have increased a fair amount, about 25% over the last month or so. As the economies start picking up, people start using more fuel. Do you have any questions on this slide? If not,
Brad,
go ahead.
Thank you. When you talk about the fuel prices and then the uptick as a result of economies slowly increasing, so we currently budget $2.50 per gallon, and we changed that for next year to $2. Do you still feel comfortable with the $2?
Yeah, we changed it to $2.25 a gallon, so we feel fairly comfortable with that right now.
$2.25. Okay, thank you. I apologize. I had the number wrong in my head.
Next slide, please. And so this slide illustrates our passenger revenue situation, which again has been described elsewhere. If you look at the far right, on a cumulative basis, so total for the year, UTA has received, that green bar, about $31 million in fare box revenue from our riders. We budgeted about $50.6 million, and the difference is the $19.6 million. So we have $19.6 million in fare box revenue than we planned for the year. So our sales tax is up, our fare box is down, Next slide, please. On terms of sales tax collections, we can see that cave-shaped recession impact here in our sales tax growth rates for the 12 months ending October 31st. We can see in counties where they're building a lot of houses right now, in Utah County, in Davis County, Weber County, Tooele, and Box Elder County. They're building a lot of houses there, and so we're seeing double-digit growth in sales taxes. Whereas in Salt Lake County, where we just don't have as much land to build on, we're seeing sales tax growth rate in the 3.5% range for that time period. Next slide, please. And then our sales tax revenue, as I discussed on the right side, you can see we're about $8 million above where we thought we would be for sales tax revenues. Next slide. And so Carol brought up the fact that we received some additional stimulus funding from the federal government that's been announced. Both the first stimulus package, the CARES Act, gave us a certain amount of money. We've been able to draw down that green bar, which is $85.4 million in CARES Act money that we've been able to draw down so far through November. And you compare that to our revenue loss associated with Farebox, and it's helped us recover that. Of course, CARES Act money we're also using as a cushion for the future. So it's not only now, but it's in the future. We still have a lot of uncertainty with regard to the future because none of us really know what's going to happen with the economy and the impact of the coronavirus and those sorts of things. So that's giving us a bit of a cushion to face uncertainty of the future. Next slide, please. The next three slides are basically different ways of looking at the same thing, which is our actual expenses as an agency versus our budget for the agency. And you can see that that top line number is $30.3 million. That means we're $30 million below where we thought we would be for the year for our operating expenses. And that's due to a lot of efforts on our parts to manage our costs in the face of uncertainty. Some of the expenses that are in these areas, and the top line is in our administrative expenses. We've seen that we haven't had to use contingencies that we had in place to meet unexpected expenses. We've ramped back certain expenses associated with our microtransit project, as we've had less ridership than we originally expected. And we've been able to reduce some of our technology areas. In the operations support area, there are things that we've been able to do there in terms of reducing the need for some labor, some training for operators, as we've been able to retain our very important operators to run our buses and trains. And so we haven't needed to hire as many of those folks at this time. And moving on down, one of the big things that's happened both in the paratransit line, commuter rail line, and the bus line is we've had lower fuel costs. We had budgeted fuel costs of $2.50 a gallon. Year to date, it's well below that. So about 50% of that savings overall for those three areas are associated with fuel savings. We've also been able to save money in terms of maintenance costs as vehicle miles have been changed to meet the demand of our customers and to through cost savings initiatives. And so as a result of these things, we've been able to manage our costs down to meet the challenges that we face. Because the key thing is we've been able to modify our operations to meet our customers' needs while at the same time being fiscally responsible.
Hey, Brad, just
Yes.
an observation, but it's interesting and certainly to managers' credit that the savings in expenses have at least equated or slightly been more than our loss in fare revenue. So when you look at the stability of sales tax, that's, at least we got through 2020, I guess, is a fair way to say it.
That is a great way to say it. This has been a team effort. It's been working with our operations people and other elements of the organization. We work to try to say, how can we modify our operations and such to make sure that we are fiscally sustainable, which always makes finance people like myself very happy. Any other questions or comments?
Any other questions for Brad from the board? Great. Does that conclude your report, Brad?
That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll move to resolutions, and the first item up is a resolution authorizing the execution of a master development agreement and master development plan with Clearfield City, Stack Development and Hamilton Partners. And we had a fairly extensive presentation in December, and have had some others before that, but we welcome back Paul Drake. And Paul, do you have any updates, or is there a small presentation you're going to make in this regard?
There's just a small presentation. We brought a couple of slides just for your reference. Make sure that you're reminded of what's there. I also have with me Jordan Swain, our project manager, and our general counsel, Tim Merrill, if you do have questions that they can field. So first of all, we do want to thank you, the board, for your guidance, your consideration during this process. We're certainly excited to move forward with this project, as is Clearfield City. So thank you to Mayor Shepard, the City Council, and his staff. They've truly shown an essence of partnership, and they're, as you know, Mr. Chair, trustees, that the City Council has already approved this plan and the agreements. And they're anxious to move forward, and we're also appreciative of our development partner, Stack and Hamilton. So this first slide, it looks familiar to you because this is the illustrative master plan included in the master development plan. It shows the massing, the intensity of uses, the street connectivity, and the integration with our transit infrastructure. We're happy to field any questions that you have on that. This was included in the master development plan, along with all the details, requirements for street sections and design, etc., that were discussed last time. And next slide, please.
Paul, can I just ask one question? The radius circle on that map, is that just to show your proximity to the transit station, or what's the purpose of this?
It is.
Circle?
I believe that's a quarter mile or a 5-minute walk.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So it shows you how much intensity is within just a short distance of that platform. So, okay. So next slide. Also, by way of reminder, the function of the master development agreement and master development plan is inherent in the mixed use code for Clearfield City. These will act as the governing documents, basically the code for the TOD. They establish these parameters for tax increment, bonding, development phasing, fees, reimbursements, ownership, and maintenance obligations. All were discussed last time, and of course we're happy to field any additional questions or clarify anything that you need on those. Next slide. Staff believes that the master development plan, master development agreement are in UTA's best interest and the interest of all parties, and we recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution for the plan, for the agreement, and then authorize the Executive Director to execute the agreement. Any questions that you have for us?
Any questions of Paul or the rest of staff? Beth, it looks like you might.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to kind of like touch on some of the work that Paul and his team and Jordan have done. It's really been substantial, and they have really done an excellent job of navigating through all of this. And I just wanted to give them my appreciation on that. The Clearfield site in general is, I think, one of these examples of how this is really going to be so impactful to the city moving forward. for those who don't know, there's a lot of aerospace development right in that area, and Hill Air Force Base is adjacent to, it's east of Clearfield City, and one of those access points is right there. And in addition to that, they have a major investment in Falcon Hill area, which is with Northrop Grumman, and also the Ogden Airport is getting some substantial upgrades, with the anticipation that there's going to be a lot of job and growth opportunities right in this area. So I just think that this is an excellent example of how we can help a community be able to maximize the access that they do have to this site. So I just wanted to point that out, and thank you again for all of your hard work. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Trustee.
I would certainly echo Beth's comments, and this is a good example for us to point to for future opportunities as well. So thanks for your efforts there. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on the resolution. Beth, did you want to make that?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'd like to recommend we approve R 2021-01-01, the resolution authorizing the execution of a master development agreement and a master development plan with Clearfield City, Stack Development, and Hamilton Partners.
I second that.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff on the resolution. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Trustee Aserson,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Paul. I think the hardest work is yet to come, so we wish you keep us posted on how it progresses, and tell Clearfield City thanks on our behalf.
We certainly will. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Next item up is a resolution appointing officers and setting compensation for the district officers and employees for 2021. And with that, we welcome Kim Uliberry. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning, trustees, and thank you, Chair. Yes, I am here today to ask you to adopt the resolution that appoints our officers and sets the compensation for the employees in 2021. This resolution lays out some of the officers that were appointed previously in 2020. There haven't been any changes, but just to clarify, it appoints Annette Royal as the board secretary, and William Green as the treasurer, Troy Bingham as the comptroller, and Ronald Ellis as the internal auditor. And then in addition to appointing, reaffirming those appointments, it also sets the compensation structure for all of those officers as well as the employees of UTA, except for the Board of Trustees, which their compensation is set through a separate process. And I wanted to point out that this salary structure that's attached as Exhibit A, really, it has no change from the structure that we operated under for 2020. We did do some preliminary market research on whether to adjust our structure this year, and we're seeing, a lot of organizations holding on their salary structure this year, just waiting to see the impacts of COVID. And we feel that we can still be competitive if we don't change anything on the structure. I also wanted to point out that we are in the process of just looking at our compensation practices and policies for potential improvements, or just to make sure that we are following best practices. And so if something were to come out of that, we would bring that back to this board too, if we had any adjustments later in the year. And pretty much that's what I have to talk about. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for Kim? That was a helpful explanation. Thank you, Kim. If there are none, I would entertain a motion on the resolution.
I would like to make that motion, resolution R 2021-01-02, resolution appointing officers and setting compensation for district officers and employees for 2021.
Second.
I have a motion from Jeff, seconded by Beth on the resolution. We'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Aserson,
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for that update. That brings us to item C, which is a resolution authorizing the executive director to execute grant agreements for specified projects. And with that, we'll welcome Mary Delaretto. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning. Yes, this resolution is to approve the executive director to execute 2 grants that we were awarded late last year through the Federal Transit Administration. The first one was the Suicide Prevention Research Project Grant. Oh, can I have the next slide, please? So the first was the Suicide Prevention Project Research Grant, and the second was the Transit Infrastructure Condition Assessment Research. They were both research grants. Can I have the next slide, please? So for the Suicide Prevention Grant, the total amount of that grant of that project is $280,000, with $224,000 being the federal share and $56,000 being the local match. This project is included in our capital budget for 2021. Of the $56,000 local match, $10,000 of that will be in-kind contributions through our partners. And then the Transit Infrastructure Grant, that is a total of $436,194 project, with $338,155 coming from the federal share, and the $98,039 match is coming from our project partners, which are the University of Utah and Autofill. Next slide, please. So we did come and present these 2 projects to you, but just as a reminder, the Suicide Prevention Grant is a research grant. It's going to use radar camera surveillance and detection system that will give an early warning to our operators in the control room if a trespasser is near the rails. And the locations that we're selecting to put this imaging software will be primarily, or the hardware will be primarily locations that we've had a number of attempted suicides or deaths. Next slide, please. Here's just a picture showing what the thermal imaging software does. It shows you that there might be somebody near a location. Next slide. So in addition to the radar camera surveillance and detection system, we're also going to have a number of signs placed up. We're calling them hope poles, which have the suicide prevention lifeline number on them. And then we're also going to do a gap analysis. So we'll look for gaps in fencing or lighting, where we need to have more no trespassing signs. The grant allows for a total of 20 additional signs and poles, an additional 2,000 feet of fencing, and we can use it on either the front runner or the tracks corridors. And there will also be a community outreach element to that. Next slide, please. The second project the research project that we received a grant for is the Polarized Infrared and Optical Imaging System research project. And this project is a demonstration project that will help us identify defects along rail track and tie structures. And the way it will work is that a polarized infrared camera will be attached to either an inspection vehicle or even to our revenue service vehicles. And as the train or the vehicle rides along the track, it'll be able to identify areas of track where there may be flaws. The next slide, please. So this just shows how it's worked. The cameras are mounted on the vehicle, and then it looks forward and it shows you where there may be flaws on the system. Next slide, please. So it will help improve the safety of the rail system by avoiding catastrophic failures. It will also be able to scan the whole system as we're working at operating speed, and it has national applicability. So hopefully we'll find it successful and we'll be able to share it with other transit agencies. Next slide, please. Okay, I think that was it. Any questions on those grants?
Any questions for Mary? That was a helpful reminder, Mary, of what those grants involve. Thank you.
Just
if
a comment, Chair, if I could.
Yeah, please, Jeff.
I am encouraged by our efforts to try to make our rail and systems safe to everyone. I just applaud the efforts to put forward some protective measures and options for people to stay safe and retain health and life. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Great point. If there are no other questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve our 2021-01-03, the resolution authorizing the executive director to execute grant agreements for these specified projects.
I will second that motion.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff on the resolution. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Trustee Acerson,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mary. I guess you're still up, though. We have a resolution authorizing the issuance of a notice to proceed under construction manager, general contractor, or CMGC contract for the Tiger first last mile connection program for projects for 2021. And I think we've seen something similar to this last year, but Mary, why don't you tell us what we're facing here?
Yes, we did. You approved very similar resolution last year for our 2020 projects under the Tiger First Mile, Last Mile program of projects. Heather Benning, who is the project manager, will go into more detail, but this is just to authorize approval of all the projects that we anticipate coming in 2021 under this program that we've already identified the projects and estimated costs. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather to talk about what the resolution details.
Good morning. Can you advance to the next slide? Okay, thank you. So as mentioned, last year and the year before, we did a similar resolution for the Tiger projects. So with the Tiger project in general, there's so many projects within the program. There's multiple projects happening at one time. Once those projects complete design and are ready for construction, that's when we enter into the phase 2 amendment. So with there being so many projects, it's an advantage for us to be able to execute those and allow Carolyn to execute those as they become ready to move into construction. So this resolution provides the executive director authority to approve the notices to proceed for the phase 2 Tiger projects during the 2021 calendar year, as long as they're consistent with the overall Tiger grant construction budget for the projects that we've identified in Exhibit A. So I think we have this exhibit on the next slide. So these are the projects that we have slated for 2021 to move into the construction phase. So we have all the projects listed here that are basically remaining in the program. The total project budget, what that budget's comprised of as far as grant funds, matching funds, or UTA funds. And then in the far right column is the estimated construction contract amount. So about $23 million in project budget, but about $15 million in construction contract. And I believe that is the last slide, if there's any questions.
So Heather, does this finish out the sort of list of Tiger projects in the entirety?
Yeah, so all of the projects listed here are the remaining projects in the program. Okay. So, the schedule currently is that all of these would be initiated this year, but it's the Provo Pedestrian Bridge, construction will go into 2022, but they will all start this year.
Are the rest of them anticipated being completed this year then, including the 300 North Bridge?
Yes, we are looking to, the Tiger grant has a milestone for substantial completion of construction by the end of 2021, and then everything has to be absolutely complete by October 2022. So there's a couple that depend on some Union Pacific coordination. We know for sure that Provo is going into 2022. The other project, the 300 North Ped Bridge, we're pushing as hard as we can to get that finished this year. So, and really it's just going to depend on long lead materials and Union Pacific coordination. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Heather or Mary? Beth?
Yes, thank you. Heather, Mary, I just was curious. Could you remind me that the wayfinding and bike parking, is that throughout our system or is that just in certain areas?
It's throughout the system. So the wayfinding is mostly the front runner stations. So we're going to be putting in some signs on the platforms that are going to be consistent, similar to what's being put in at the Vineyard station. For the bike parking, bike repair stands, those amenities are throughout the system, front runner and tracks. And then the bus stop improvements are obviously within where we have bus routes. So
thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Other questions on these projects? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on the resolution.
Okay, Chair Christensen, I would entertain the motion to move to approve R 2021-01-04, resolution authorizing the issuance of a notice to proceed under a construction manager / general contractor CM/GC contract for the Tiger First / Last Mile Connection Program of projects for 2021.
Second.
I have a motion from Jeff, seconded by Beth on the resolution. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Acerson?
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook?
Aye.
Chair Christensen?
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
I think I got that in one breath, Carlton.
Yeah, I'm really impressed. I'm getting old enough. I'd have to stop for an extra breath in there, Jeff. That brings us to item E, which I understand is related, but it's a resolution approving the execution of an interlocal cooperation agreement with Lehi City for provision of additional funds to supplement the existing Tiger stakeholder agreement. And with that, we'll return back to both Mary and Heather for explanation.
Okay, yes, these next two resolutions are both regarding the Lehi pedestrian bridge under the Tiger project. The first is regarding the agreement between UTA and Lehi City, and the second is regarding the agreement between UTA and the Mountain Land Association of Governments. And I'm going to let Heather go through both of those resolutions for you.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So just a little bit of background. So for the Lehi pedestrian bridge, it's the last bullet point on this slide. So during final design, when we had the final pricing with the contractor, we found out that we needed some additional funding for construction of the project. So we worked with MAG and Lehi City to find some additional funding. So construction for this particular project, the Lehi pedestrian bridge, we've done in 2 phases. So we did one phase 2 amendment that's already been executed to start construction for all of the 2020 work. And then the table that we just saw in the previous resolution shows the contract that's required for the 2021 work once these agreements are executed and that funding is added to the project. So starting off on the project, Lehi City was not contributing any funding to the project. MAG was providing the matching funds on behalf of the city. But in adding these additional funds, MAG's adding some additional federal funding that Lehi City is going to be matching. So agreement-wise, we have a stakeholder agreement in place with Lehi City and a supplement number 1 to that, which were executed on March 30th, 2018. So that established the initial project budget of about $5.2 million. And that was made up of the Tiger grant funds and then $2 million in MAG matching funds. So separately from that, we had a cooperative agreement between UTA and MAG executed on December 18th, 2018, which committed MAG to their $2 million contribution. That $2 million ended up being $828,351 in MAG funds and then $1.2 million in UDOT funds. So UDOT came in and added funding to the project later, so that reduced the amount that MAG had to contribute to the project. So that 828 in MAG funds and the 1.2 million in UDOT funds have already been received by UTA. Next slide. So the total amount we're adding to the project is $1,045,549, and that's comprised of another $95,000 in Tiger grant funds, which was remaining from Tiger funds that have, or Tiger projects that have already been completed under budget. $886,197 in MAG federal funds, which came from contingency funds they had allocated for the project. And then 803,000 of those new MAG funds were from a project that they had with Lehi, the 700 South Cycle Track project. So they reduced scope on that project so that they could move some of those funds to this project. And then the 64,352 from Lehi City is to match that 886 in MAG federal funds. Next slide. So this table here is included in the supplement number 2 to the Lehi UTA stakeholder agreement. So it shows the original supplement number 1 had $5.2 million budget. In supplement 2, we're adding the $1,045,000 to get a new budget of $6,328,289. So this particular supplement, though, is committing Lehi to that additional $64,352. I believe that's the last slide. Any questions on that?
Jeff, it looks like you might have a question or a comment.
No, I'm just ready to make the motion. I'm
Okay.
excited to see this move forward. So if that's appropriate, Chair, I would make the motion to approve R 2021-01-05, resolution approving the execution of an interlocal cooperation agreement with Lehi City for promotion of additional funds to supplement the existing Tiger stakeholder agreement.
I'll second. It's exciting. I am excited too.
I have a motion and a second on the resolution. Motion by Jeff, seconded by Beth. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Acerson,
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
I think then there's a second resolution, which I believe was in the overall explanation, correct, Heather?
Yeah, I think we just have one additional slide on this one. So,
Okay.
yeah, so this resolution is for execution of the cooperative agreement amendment 1 with MAG. Basically, same summary. In general, we're adding that $1 million of funding, but this is for MAG's specific commitment to that. Just one thing to add in addition to the total $1 million addition. The agreement with MAG also discusses their contribution to the Provo pedestrian bridge. And when the UDOT funds came in, so there's UDOT funding that came in on both of those projects. And when you look at the total funding overall for both bridge projects, we ended up being way overmatched with local funds on the Lehi Ped Bridge, and we're undermatched on Provo. So how we're going to resolve that is we're going to do an exchange of $300,000 in MAG federal funds from Lehi with $300,000 in Tiger federal funds. So we're just kind of swapping the funds between the two bridge projects with MAG, which MAG is both providing local funds on. or matching funds on to get those to both meet those matching requirements for the federal funds. So there's no additional funds, but that 300,000 is just being exchanged between the two projects, federal for federal.
Okay. Good clarification. Any questions though for Heather on this one? Now, Heather, I've heard a vicious rumor that you will, in the future, won't have a UTA email address, and they're going to, we hope not greener pastures, but we certainly want to thank you for your service here at UTA and certainly on this project and getting it to this point. So thank you. We wish you well in those endeavors.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Great. If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion on the resolution. Jeff, is that one you want to make?
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and make it. I should defer to Beth, but I'll be a little overbearing here. And I'd like to make the motion to approve R 2021-01-06, resolution approving the execution of an interlocal cooperation agreement with Mountain Land Association of Governments for provision of additional funds to amend the existing Tiger stakeholder agreement.
Second.
I have a motion from Jeff, seconded by Beth on the resolution. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Acerson,
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks again, Heather, and thanks, Mary, for your efforts on this.
Thank you.
That brings us to, let me make sure I'm not, I flipped this over way too early. Next item, we're up to contracts, disbursements, and grants, and the first one before us is a contract on a front-runner bike car project with Rail Plan International. And with that, we welcome Eddie Cummins. Or it looks like I don't see Eddie, but I see Bruce, so I'm guessing Bruce has all the answers. Oh, there's
Here,
Eddie.
Chair. I'm here. Sorry about that. I was having difficulties.
No,
Thank you. So this is a sole source contract with Rail Plan International to replace bike racks on 16 commuter rail vehicles. Total amount of this contract is $335,890. Just a little background. In 2015, Frontrunner staff identified the need to redesign bike cars to increase the number of available bike racks and improve customer experience. In January of 2016, a new bike rack design was identified and submitted to the FRA for approval. In October of 2017, FRA notified UTA that the proposed design, as well as the in-use bike cars, were non-compliant. Since 2017, UTA and FRA have continued to communicate to resolve the non-compliance issue and identify a successful design. On August 7, 2020, Frontrunner submitted a new design to the FRA for preliminary approval. The FRA agreed that the design met their expectations and would give final approval at an in-person inspection upon the installation of the new bike racks. The new bike rack system will accommodate an additional 5 bikes per car, increasing overall fleet capacity by 80. The new bike racks are a diagonal system rather than the side-by-side configuration, which will make it easier for customers to insert and remove bikes from the rack. The proposed bike rack system complies with the Code of Federal Regulations, 49 CFR Part 238.113B, emergency window exits, and ease of operability. Rail Plan International will perform the engineering and installation on the pilot car and ensure UTA employees are properly trained. FRA will be invited to inspect the first bike rack configuration and provide documented approval. Once we receive FRA approval on the design, UTA employees will move forward with the installation on the remaining 15 cars. Are there any questions on this contract?
You know, Carlton, if I can make a comment.
Yeah, please.
This morning when I was riding Frontrunner, I noticed the bike racks that are currently there. I thought the capacity is there, but the usability or the ease of use, I thought that could be a little challenging how they're set up. And so it's interesting that this is on our agenda today to make that change and that transition to I guess, a more user-friendly type of setup for the bike rack. So good job, and I look forward to seeing the implementation of that.
Yeah, one question I had for, I don't know, Bruce or Eddie is, do you find, sort of pre-COVID, were the bike racks mostly full? And does this new addition sort of give you breathing room, or just sort of manages a huge crowd?
Yes. I'll let Bruce speak to that. Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you. Yes, pre-COVID, we regularly, in our peak times, the bike racks are full and people are standing with their bikes in many different parts of the train. And so this really is an important thing for both safety and as well as customer convenience that we believe is going to be very important. And it was interesting, not too long after COVID, I was riding the train, and even though passenger loads were fairly low, we actually had a full bike car, or all of the bike slots were taken, even during COVID level ridership. So for some reason, more of our bike riders have kept riding, I think, during COVID than perhaps some of our other riders. So it is very needed.
All right, thank you. Other questions?
I just had a quick question, Bruce, in terms of how long do you anticipate that this will take before all of these are completed?
So in working with RailPlan, as soon as, we've been talking to them, and as soon as the funds are approved, they are ready to go. Most of the engineering has already been done. And so now it's a matter of them being able to order the parts and get that first car up and running. We think that's going to take a month or two to get that first one going. And then over the next several months, the other cars would be installed. Hopefully midsummer is probably the optimistic time frame, but definitely by the end of 2021.
That's great. Thank you. I'm excited to see this project as well. I know we've talked about it for a little while, and so it's good to see this. I'm one of those people that would be like panicked if I couldn't figure it out quickly, and so I don't know if that's very common, but it's good to know that's going to be a little bit simpler.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on this contract.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Frontrunner Bike Car Project with RailPlan International.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff on the contract. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thanks, Bruce, for your help. I think, Eddie, we're still with you, and we have another contract on Frontrunner North Park and ride lots and sidewalk snow removal. So this is probably the reason we haven't received any snow this year. Is that correct?
That was what I was hoping for. So this is a 5-year contract with Yardmasters Incorporated for snow removal and de-icing services on at 8 of our Salt Lake, Davis, and Weber County locations. This is the 5-year total amount of this contract is $500,000. The scope covers all parking areas and sidewalks leading to the train platforms. Due to training requirements, UTA facilities maintenance employees will perform the snow removal task on the actual train platforms, however. The annual amount of this contract is estimated at $100,000 and is consistent with previous year expenditures. The exact amount obviously will depend a great deal on the actual snowfall during the winter season. The contractor will provide all equipment and supplies required to complete the contracted services. Are there any questions on this contract?
Any questions from the board? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on the contract.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the contract with the Frontrunner North Park and Ride Lots And sidewalks, snow removal with Yard Masters Incorporated.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. The next one is a Front Runner South Park and Ride Lots and Sidewalk Snow Removal with Concrete Inc. And Eddie, we'll come back to you. That's quite the name.
That is quite the name. As you mentioned, this is a very, very similar contract just for Front Runner South. This is a 5-year contract with Concrete Incorporated for snow removal and de-icing services at 4 Utah County locations. 5-year total amount for this contract is $250,000. The scope covers all parking areas and sidewalks leading to the train platforms. Due to training requirements, once again, UTA facilities employees will perform the snow removal task at the actual platforms. Annual amount of this contract is $50,000, which is consistent with previous year expenditures. However, just like I said before, actual expenditures will depend a great deal on, depending on the actual snowfall during the winter season. Contractor will provide all equipment and supplies required to complete the contracted services. Any questions on this contract?
Any questions from the board? Not seeing any. I'll entertain a motion on this contract.
Chair Christensen, I'll motion to approve contract as presented in the meeting materials.
We have a motion from Jeff,
Second.
a second from Beth. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes. That brings us to item D on our agenda, which is a contract for camera and access control maintenance and a service agreement with Stone Security. And with that, we welcome Sheldon Shaw, and I believe Dan Riley may be with you as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, today I bring to you a contract renewal for Stone Security. They do maintenance and service for us on our access control and our cameras. And yes, with me today is Dan Riley, our manager of security, and also Ron Kendall, our video security administrator, both of whom do a lot of interaction with Stone Security. This is a 5-year contract, total cost of $225,000. It goes from 2021 through 2025. It has an annual cost of $45,000. Should be noted that this is a big discount because of our long-standing relationship and due to COVID-19 from what the contract amount may have been. Also, it should be noted that this is the same price per year that we negotiated back in 2016. And for reference, in 2016, we had just over 1,200 licenses for video surveillance. Now we're over 1,600. And for access control, we were at 160 in 2016. Now we're over 320 portals. So this is an excellent value for us at UTA, and I look for approval of this contract. Any questions for me or my team?
So Sheldon, remind me, was this done through some kind of open procurement, or is this on the state contract?
This is on the state contract, and it's guaranteed for the next 3 years. And then we anticipate that for the final 2 years, that Stone will have a new contract with the state, and then we'll follow suit.
Okay. And if for some reason the state contract doesn't materialize, would we have to go out to procurement for the final 2 years, or are we covered for these final 2 years?
My understanding, we'd have to go out to procurement.
Okay. All right. Questions from the board? Sounds like we've had the benefit of the same price for additional security cameras over the years. So
They're a great client.
good. Seeing no other questions, I would entertain a motion on this contract.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the camera and access control maintenance and service agreement with Stone Security.
I second that motion.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thanks, Sheldon. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, sir.
That brings us, that brings us to our revenue contract with Rocky Mountain Power, Special Projects Incentive Award on the Ogden Weber State University BRT, as well as the Depot Electric, Weber State University BRT Depot Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Project. Finally got through the title there, but we'll go to Mary and Hal. You're probably going to explain what I just couldn't say.
Good morning. Yes, as part of our Ogden Weber State Bus Rapid Transit project, we are planning on using electric vehicles for that project. And so because we have electric vehicles, we need to install charging infrastructure. We'll have some en route charging along the corridor, but we also need to have depot charging at our maintenance facility for overnight slower charging. And that depot charging project itself, we estimate about $1.4 million for that. And we were notified December 30th, so just 2 weeks ago, that Rocky Mountain Power has selected this project for an award of an estimated amount of between $400,000 and $500,000 to go towards that project. And I'm going to let Hal Johnson talk a little bit more about that award. And Hal has done a great job for us he's doing great partnership with Rocky Mountain Power, and we've gotten a number of awards from them, and they've been a great partner for us. So Hal, I'm turning it over to you.
Good morning, everybody. The project we're doing with Rocky Mountain Power, as was touched on, is for depot charging at the Mount Ogden Bus Garage. We're planning for charging infrastructure to support the 11 buses. So we'll have 4 charge cabinets, and each cabinet has 3 leads, so we can charge 3 leads or 3 buses per cabinet. So the funding from Rocky Mountain Power will be used for bringing power to the site, as well as for the charging infrastructure equipment. We had gotten a similar award from Rocky Mountain Power for the 2 chargers we built over at the central station. So as Mary mentioned, we've had a great partnership with Rocky Mountain Power. We signed that partnership agreement that the board had seen last year, and I think this is one of the dividends from that partnership. So be happy to answer any questions about the project.
Any questions from the board?
Hal, just a question. Once Rocky Mountain finalizes everything on their end and determines what the actual amount of the award is, does that mean that portion of the project will start immediately in terms of the site, the depot?
Yeah, we need to get the work done soon. For Rocky Mountain Power, the funding they're using is closing out their current infrastructure program, and in 2022 they'll have a new program that we can apply for additional funding from. And so this will be closing out their existing program. So we'll need to get the work done as soon as we can. And we went through the selection process to procure buses for the project, and that contract also included the charging infrastructure. So we will need to order the charging infrastructure and get that going. And I've got a contract, draft contract from Rocky Mountain Power for the power service. So we'll need to execute that one as well.
Thanks, I appreciate that. That's also exciting, and dovetailing it with the LOMP news is that just really is nice flow for today for Ogden BRT. So thanks.
Yeah, it's all coming together for Ogden BRT.
Other questions for Hal? Hal, I've decided you must have network access to Rocky Mountain award spreadsheet, and you just go in and fill in the numbers, and then they award it to us. So that's a compliment for having a good partnership there, and they've been good partners. But thank you for your efforts. If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion on this revenue contract.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this revenue contract with Rocky Mountain Power, the Special Projects Incentive Offer Award for the Ogden WSU BRT Depot Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Project.
I second that motion.
I have a motion from Beth, seconded by Jeff on the revenue contract. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Thanks again, Mary, and thanks, Hal, for your work on that. It'll be exciting to see that project move forward. We have before us on service and fare approvals a sponsored fare agreement for the trip reduction for free fares and days. This is amendment number 1 with the Department of Air Quality, and with that, we welcome Monica Morton. Good morning, Monica.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and trustees, and Happy New Year. It's good to be with you today again. So last year, we partnered with the Division of Air Quality to provide free fares in January and February, and those would be days that are forecasted to be mandatory action days for air quality. But because the air quality did not reach that level, we did not offer any free fares. So this contract, the original contract, it goes through 2022, and the projected revenue is $492,000. Language in the original contract had to be altered, so we're presenting this amendment to you for approval. There were 3 main areas that we changed. The first one is the original contract was $70,000 for each free fare day without ski service, and if ski service was going to be included the price per day was $82,000. But this year, because we have limits on ski service, we are going to exclude it from free fares. And because of the lower COVID ridership, we've recalculated the amount and dropped it to a daily billing of $25,000. So it'll be $25,000 a day for any free fare days in January and February this year, and we will recalculate that billing amount again in 2022. And the last part of the amendment removes language limiting UTA to a total of 7 free fare days, as long as the contract amount does not exceed $472,000. Originally, we had the limit of 7 days based on the $82,000, but we feel like because the price has dropped due to reduced ridership, we can actually get more than 7 free fare days in before 2022. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if not, then with your approval, we'll move forward with implementing this amendment.
Monica, I did have one question. What was the reasoning behind not including December? Like, there was a week last December where we got into red days, and I was surprised, but then I'd forgotten that it was limited to January and February. Was that because of fears of holiday crowds, or?
Yes, that's correct. So, we want to get really good data and analyze the impact on air quality when people take advantage of free fare days. And basically, because of all of the holiday travel, we didn't feel like we would be able to get data that would support the argument that free fare days does indeed improve air quality.
Beth, it looked like you might have had a question.
Yeah, more just like a comment. First, I wanted to thank Monica and her team for working on this. As you recall, Representative Joel Briscoe was this was his legislation from a little over a year ago. Oh my goodness, or 2 years ago almost. And this has been a group effort working with Division of Air Quality as well as other partners to make sure that we can get good, solid data. The goal, of course, being that this would be utilized on orange days and not red days to minimize the actual red days. That was the initial premise. And I think that we've worked well to get a good compromise based on, some of the COVID restrictions, et cetera, that have had to go into effect due to the pandemic. So I just wanted to kind of like give a little bit of history on that and just say thank you again. I think that this will be a good strategy moving forward. And again, when we take a look at it, we'll see how that next phase of that looks.
I agree. Thank you, Trustee Holbrook.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on this revenue contract amendment.
Chair Christensen, I'll make the motion to approve the sponsored fare agreement, trip reduction, free fare days, Amendment 1, Division Air Quality.
Second.
I have a motion from Jeff, seconded by Beth. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Thanks, Monica. And, well, we hope and we don't hope that we get to use these this year.
I agree.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. That brings us to our discussion items, and the first item up is the Ogden Weber State University Bus Rapid Transit Project update. And with that, we welcome Mary DiLoretto and Janelle Robertson. Welcome again, Mary.
Hello. Yes, we've had a lot of discussion about this project already today, the Ogden Weber State Bus Rapid Transit Project, and we are ready to move into construction within the next few months, especially now that we were awarded the letter of no prejudice. So Janelle Robertson, we thought this is going to give a presentation. We thought this would be a fitting time to update you on where that project is. So with that, I will turn it over to Janelle.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is an exciting time. It's a lot of work right now, but it's a very exciting time in the project, and then we're about to start it up and get get everything kind of finalized on the project. So it's been a project long in the making, as others, Hal Johnson and others who've been in the planning phases of it for a very, very long time. So I get the fun part of constructing it, but there's been a lot of people who contributed to making sure this project has moved forward, especially all of our partners on the project who also find it very important for their community. So if you want to move to the next slide. Just a quick overview of the project, just to jog your memory of what it is. It's a 5.3 mile BRT project. 1.8 miles of it is exclusive bus lanes. Those bus lanes are primarily on Harrison Boulevard, and a new bus lane through the center of the Weber State campus, which is actually a really cool feature, something that hasn't been done in a lot of places. So WSU's gathered the vision of having transit on our campus and what that means for their students. So there's 13 total stations. We will be getting 11 electric buses. We also need to do some modifications and expansion to the Ogden business unit in order to be able to maintain those additional buses with the rest of their fleet. The ridership per day on the regular BRT route from the Ogden Intermodal Center to campus is about 2,500 riders a day. The campus shuttle is going to be taken over by this BRT project. Before COVID hit, that shuttle was seeing about 5,500 riders a day. So we'll be taking those 5,500 riders and adding them to the full route ridership for about 8,000 riders a day. So it's pretty good ridership numbers. That's a really exciting service and an improvement to the shuttle and the bus service in Ogden. The peak hour service on the BRT is 10 minutes, and then the shuttle will be 10 minutes, but that will provide a 5-minute service through campus. So that's a really frequent good service for students during the day and be able to move around campus quickly. Does anybody have any questions about the scope of the project? Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. So the funding plan really is an indication of all of the partners on the project and all of the hard work they've done to gather all of the funding sources. This is going to be a lot of fun to manage throughout the project, but also showing a commitment from everybody to try to cobble together all the funding that we need on the project. The total project cost is $120.5 million. Local funds for the project are approximately $42 million, and the remaining we expect to come from a Federal Transit Administration Small Starts Grant. It's about $78 million. We've received a variety of funding sources through WFRC, through Weber County, through UDOT with the TTIF funds, right-of-way donations on the project, our land that our partners are willing to allow us to use at no cost to us, and we're able to count that as a local map. The Rocky Mountain Power Grant that Hal just mentioned, they committed the $400,000 to $500,000 this year, and then we'll apply for an additional $250,000 next year. So we anticipate getting a total of $750,000 on that. FTA has already allocated $75.1 million to the project, so that means they've identified in their budget where the funding for this project is going to come from. So that's a very good indication of getting a grant. And we have spent approximately $9 million to date on management, design, and kind of getting the project teed up for construction so far. Does anybody have any questions on the funding plan?
I think we're good.
Next slide. So status to date, we have began purchasing properties that we need for the project. There were 3 full acquisitions, 2 of them on Harrison Boulevard and 1 of them on near the Weber State campus where we needed to purchase a house for the busway. And then there'll be a variety of strip takes along Harrison Boulevard as we widen the road to accommodate the bus lanes. Electric Bus Company, I believe the selection committee has selected somebody, but they're in the process of awarding that contract. So we're well on our way to getting the buses that we need for the project. And as of December, the design for the project is 100% complete. That's been about 1.5 years in the making. The contractor, as you approved at your last board meeting, had the contractor start to begin early work on the project, so they have started some early utility relocations for the project. And then other exciting news, our letter of no prejudice that we requested from the Federal Transit Administration was approved this week. So we're making a lot of good progress here. We're expecting that our grant agreement with FTA will probably be summer to timeframe this in 2021. It could be later. We do not have a lot of control over kind of the grant side of it with the Federal Transit Administration. But as we're looking at it right now, that's when we anticipate we'll have the grant. And we are in the process of finalizing costs and the construction schedule with the contractor as we are moving this forward, and we plan to bring that to conclusion prior to them starting construction in March. So we're making a lot of progress that way. Now that the design is fully complete, we're able to finalize all of those other costs and schedule on the project. And we are updating the plans we had done previously when we did a Mount Ogden Business Unit expansion. The architect had created plans for that. Those plans need to be modified to include the electric charging infrastructure. So we're in the process of updating those plans, and then we'll put that work out for bid as well for construction of that work. Does anybody have any questions about kind of the general status of the project?
I think you're good.
Okay. Next slide. Schedule overview. We are working with the campus to determine a kind of maintenance of traffic plan through their campus to try to keep them open, but also get a substantial amount of construction work done right in the heart of their campus. We don't have a finalized contract with the contractor yet on this schedule, but they're anticipating that they could be substantially complete with the busway on WSU campus in the summer of 2022, hoping to then begin operating just the shuttle in late 2022. The construction, I'll have a little bit more detailed construction schedule on the next slide, but on Harrison Boulevard, we imagine that would be substantially complete by summer of 2023, and the full route operational in 2023. For the purposes of our grant, we may put an April of 2024 date in there just to make sure that we are 100% able to meet their commitments. But they always like us to include some pretty good contingency on that date. So we will probably put the grant revenue ready date as April of 2024, although we anticipate will be sooner than that. Okay, we can move to the next slide. It's a little bit more detail on how we plan to construct the work. The blue work is the work that's happening in Ogden City on 23rd and 25th Street, also on Washington Boulevard, which involves station work and then also involves some repaving projects in the city that need to be done to manage the additional bus traffic on streets. The orange is the kind of longest path on the project, where we are constructing on Harrison Boulevard, and that's where the substantial kind of widening of stations will be in that area. Due to the amount of work on that, that's our longest path on the project, which is pushing us to the 2023 date to be fully operational. And the green is the Weber State construction work, which is the busway and stations that are on campus, including the hub that we are building, the new hub we are building at the D Event Center for local and the BRT route. And then the purple indicates the construction schedule for the Mount Ogden Business Unit expansion.
Janelle, is it anticipated that our contractor will do the work on Harrison, or do we have to work through UDOT on that work?
Yeah, we are doing, our contractor will be doing that work, although we are coordinating, very tightly with UDOT on the work that will be happening out there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the schedule? Okay, we can go to the next slide. As we're getting into this, we're going to have a lot of upcoming board actions that we're going to need to have happen. Awarding the construction contract to Stacy and Whitback will be coming up. And also pre-procurement and a contract for a construction contractor to build the Mount Ogden Maintenance Building expansion. We do have one anticipated right-of-way condemnation. There may be more, but right now we're anticipating that there may be some condemnations that will be coming for your approval as well. We will be doing those through UDOT. And then approval of the electric bus contract as well will be coming your way. So, any other questions about this?
I don't think so. This was a great recap, though. I know Beth has been following it closely, but a lot of those details are, are new to me. Not new to me, but gives me a much clearer picture. So I appreciate your effort there.
I would say too, thank you, Janelle, for your work and the team and Mary and Manjeet and everyone who's really gotten this to this level. It is, I would agree with Carlton. It's very helpful to understand how this process gets together, because for such a long time it was this thing in the future, and now all of a sudden we're really kind of focusing in and getting everything done. And I know we couldn't do that without you guys, without our partners, and so it's exciting to see it to this level. I actually spoke with the president of Weber State, Brad Mortensen, just yesterday, and he was excited to see how this project is going, and looking at really evolving his campus in a way that he thinks is going to be really valuable for the future. And so this, yes, Carlton, I have been following this very, very closely. I've been hounding staff, as Janelle would attest, and I really appreciate all of the detail that has gone into this. There is actually even an individual who is working to coordinate the communication side, Bill Knowles, who is working with businesses and everything else. And this whole coordinated effort is really, I think, going to be such a great investment in Ogden in this area. So with that rather long commentary, I just wanted to thank you again. And it's exciting to see it to this level. And I think we will get to this. I think this, again, is a really great opportunity to show how we can work with our communities to get even better connectivity throughout their cities. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be able to work on projects that mean so much to communities. So I love this job. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Well, we'll look for some of these items to come in the not too distant future. Thank you, Janelle, for that update. With that, well, let's go to the Pointing the Mountain Transit Study Locally Preferred Alternative, or LPA, update. And with that, we welcome back Mary, Patty Garver, and as well as Ranjit Renu. Mary?
Yeah, this is another exciting project, the Point of the Mountain Transit Study, and we've made some good progress on this project. Manjit is the Director of Capital Projects for UTA, and Patty Garver is she's our Program Manager over Environmental Grants and Project Controls, but she's also right now the Project Manager on this project as it's moving through the transit study and the alternatives analysis. And I'm going to turn it over to Manjit and Patty to do their presentation.
Well, thank you, Mary, and thank you, trustees, for the opportunity to give you an update on a significant milestone with the selection of a locally preferred alternative as recommended by the advisory group that's we've been working with on this project. So I'm going to turn it over to Patty to provide some background and discussion of the LPA, and then we look forward to any comments and direction from the board as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Manjit, and good morning, trustees. So as was mentioned, I'm going to tell you about the locally preferred alternative that has been recommended for the Pointing the Mountain Transit Study by both the Technical Advisory Committee and the Steering Committee for the project. So just for some review, we started this project to look at a rapid transit high capacity connection between southern Salt Lake County and northern Utah County. And it was also to connect to existing and future development areas, including the prison redevelopment area, also known now as the Point. So it's been a very collaborative process with UDOT, the MPOs, the cities, including Sandy, Draper, South Jordan, Bluffdale, and Lehi, and other stakeholders, also including the Pointing the Mountain State Land Authority. So as you can see here, we started the project in August of 2019. We defined the goals and objectives. We started with our 5 alternatives for our level 1 evaluation. We moved into level 2 evaluation, and then just last month, the steering committee recommended the LPA. So moving on to the next slide, please. So as I said, for our level 1 evaluation, we started with 5 alternatives. We had east and west light rail, and when I say east and west, that's east and west of I-15. So we had east and west light rail, east and west bus rapid transit, and our 5th alternative we called east and west connections, and that was an enhanced BRT that connected across the primary crossings of I-15. So moving on to the next slide. So out of our level 1 evaluation, and also if you remember last August, we had an economic development roundtable, and we heard from our partners and stakeholders that economic development was a key driver for the project. And also we heard that urgency was important, that our stakeholders want to get this project done quickly. So out of level 1, we decided to focus on a segment that would enhance the economic development of the project. And we also looked at the alternative that could receive funding quicker, and it could also be implemented quicker. And we also looked at this key segment would help us to implement future phases or projects that would connect to the project. So moving on to the next slide. So for our level 2 evaluation and the findings of our level 1 evaluation, we focused on what we call the common ground segment. So on this figure, you can see it's the green line. So it starts on the north end at the Draper Front Runner Station. It crosses to the southeast across the prison redevelopment site, up over I-15, over to what's called the High Line Station at 146 South. And then it heads south entirely within UTA right-of-way down to Lehi. And also you can see at the southern end there, the dashed line, we have a potential of looking at an additional station to the south that is called the Triumph Boulevard Station. And also that would allow us, and as part of our study, we looked at connecting to the Lehi Front Runner Station to the west of I-15. And for our level 2 evaluation, we looked at both BRT and rail within this common ground segment. So moving on to the next slide. So for the bus rapid transit evaluation, we looked at what we call a gold standard BRT. So that is high functioning BRT, almost 90% exclusive lane, stations with high amenities such as level boarding, off-board fare collection. And then also, as I said, we looked at those 2 stations to the south. And this BRT option actually allows us to have an additional station at the prison site. So both of the options require having a retaining wall to get up over I-15. But with BRT, the retaining wall can be shorter, and that allows to have 2 stations at the point site. So moving on to the next slide. So for the rail evaluation, we looked at 2 technologies. We looked at diesel multiple unit option and a light rail option. So in the smaller box, you can see that the DMU option would allow us to actually use our existing front runner corridor and also access the Draper Front Runner Station just around the Draper Front Runner. And then the light rail option would require a new rail to the east side of our front runner corridor there. But this one follows a similar route to the BRT option. But as I said, it only allows for 1 station at the point site. And then this rail option would also require a satellite maintenance facility nearby the corridor. But this option, we also looked at the potential Triumph Boulevard Station to the south, and then also a connection over to Lehi Front Runner. So moving on to the next slide. So what were the differentiators? What was different between the bus option versus the rail option? So here you can see that the BRT came in at a lower cost. So right now our estimate is showing 300 to 450 million for the BRT option, whereas for rail, for the diesel multiple units, that would be between 450 to 650 million. And the light rail option would be between 600 and 850 million. other differentiators, the BRT could be constructed easier and also operated easier than a rail option. Both options, however, would benefit from the fact that the corridor is largely undeveloped. So it's sort of like starting with a clean slate, and that would benefit both rail and bus. As far as timing and implementation, the BRT option would cost less, and we could probably get it done quicker depending on funding that was available for the capital project. Moving on to the next slide. So similarities between the bus and the rail options. They both would have economic and land use benefits, and ridership was similar for both the rail and the bus, and that has something to do, that is partly due to the connection with the Central Corridor project to the south, because Central Corridor would also be a BRT. So the Point of the Mountain bus option would benefit from that connection. And for the ridership, they would both have room for improvement due to the population and employment expansion that we expect in this area in the future. So moving on to the next slide. So from the information, the level 1 evaluation and the level 2 evaluation, we ended up with our locally preferred alternative as this common ground segment between Draper Frontrunner and the Lehi station at Traverse Mountain. And it is approximately 8 miles long. It would allow for 7 stations, and that includes the 2 stations at the point. And it would be a bus rapid transit mode. And this LPA also allows for those 2 additional stations to the south, the potential station at the Triumph Boulevard station and a connection to Lehi Frontrunner. Next slide, please. So the LPA has been adopted by our stakeholders. So our next steps are for each city to adopt the LPA through a resolution. The MPOs will need to do an amendment for the long range transportation plan. And then we'll bring it back to the UTA Advisory Council for their review and approval before we bring it back to you, the Board of Trustees, for final adoption. And then moving forward, we are securing additional funding, and we will be beginning the environmental analysis as soon as possible. So that is how we came to the locally preferred alternative, and what we will be bringing back to you for approval. So are there any questions?
2 questions, Patty. First of all, thank you to you and Manjeet, Mary, for your efforts on this project. It certainly has come together and it was, I think, positively received by those stakeholders. What do you think, and I had one of the mayors ask me yesterday, what's the timing of us going back to their city council on this LPA? Is that in the next month? Is that in a few months?
Yeah, we're actually, we went to the Draper City Council last month, and Mayor Walker requested that the City Council actually tour UVX. So we're actually putting together a virtual tour of the Point of the Mountain corridor, and then we're going to give them information on UVX and have them tour UVX before we come back to their city council for adoption. So hopefully that'll be within the next month, yeah. And then the, well, that's as far as the city council adoptions, but the RTP amendment, and then bringing it back to the advisory council because the advisory council meets quarterly, we would probably be bringing it back to the advisory council in June.
And does it have to go to the MPO first? I mean, can it go to the, I would think that it could go to the advisory council and the MPO sort of on simultaneous paths, right? I mean, it's more just the timing of their meetings.
Yeah, and we've had discussions with Wasatch Front about amending their plan, and it'll be, yeah, the same sort of time frame as the advisory council.
Okay. Well, keep us posted on those city council meetings. We'd certainly like to be present if we could and be supportive. But any other questions though from the board? Beth?
Thank you. Patty, I just had a couple of questions. So Draper wanted to have their council do a final tour. Do you anticipate other cities might want that as well?
Yeah, and I've actually talked to Lehi, and they want to do the same thing. So we're going to do a similar thing with Lehi.
Which I think is great, and I'm like even wondering if it is beneficial to also communicate with like South Jordan and Bluffdale and see if they are wanting to do that, and just then you would know, and then can kind of go from there. And then my other question is when in a typical BRT, like, and this is something that I remember hearing from when I first started, so please correct me if this is not actually accurate, but a lot of times I had understood that a bus rapid transit was a way to really get the infrastructure in place that eventually it could be utilized as a rail line. Is that the intention, or is it strictly going to stay BRT? And I know that that's maybe a complicated question, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, and that's come up a lot. You know, historically, that was proposed that when you start a BRT, that it could eventually become rail. But in reality, it has not happened a lot because I think it's because once cities get a BRT, they see that it's meeting their needs and maybe probably exceeding their expectations. And that's really what has happened. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't eventually go to rail.
I like that idea, and I do agree with you. I think that probably once it's implemented and it is meeting expectations, there wouldn't really necessarily be that push to spend the additional funding. And especially when you talk about having the two stops with the BRT versus the one, you wouldn't want to take away infrastructure to do rail at some point. So I just thank you for that clarification. I think that that's helpful to have in this dialogue.
Well, and I would also mention that a lot of these BRTs, when you're inside, you wouldn't know that you weren't on rail because the vehicles are almost like the rail vehicles.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions on the presentation? Well, Patty, Manjeet, thank you, and keep us posted as it progresses, and certainly encouraging, and I know a lot of hard work has gotten taken to get to this point, so we appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Our next item up is a closed session, and to discuss, it's a strategy session to discuss pending and reasonably imminent litigation, and it will take place through a separate video conference. With that, I would entertain I would just note for the record that our next meeting will be on January the 27th, also at 9 a.m. With the purpose previously stated, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Chair Christensen, I make that motion to go into closed session. A strategy session to discuss pending and reasonable imminent litigation. Thanks, Beth.
I got a little excited. I apologize.
No, I didn't.
So I have a motion from Jeff, seconded by Beth. And I will just, for the sake of folks, we'll convene that closed session at 11:05, give people a chance to take a short break. But with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes, and so we'll reconvene in our closed session at 11:05. Hi, we welcome you back to our formal meeting. We've returned from our closed session, and it brings us to our, again, our next meeting will be on January the 27th. So it brings us to our last motion, which is for adjournment. I would entertain that motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
I second that motion.
A motion by Beth, seconded by Jeff. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes, and thanks to staff and others for today's meeting. Have a great day.
Thank you.